Hey guys, I turned the camera on. I look back and I'm like, I'm seeing a pile of like a jacket. And then like one day I think I took my bra off and like flung it back in a pile and it's just sitting there on the floor in the pile. And I was like, oh, probably not the best thing to just have sitting in a pile, on the screen. So I had to quick go over there and get it out of the view. We're still trying to clean up here. Anyway, hello, I'm Leo, one from One Happy Widow. Thank you so much for joining me live today. Feel free to, we have LaDonna here from Oklahoma. Feel free to post in and let us know where you're from. Today, we're going to talk about the main topic we're going to talk about today is going to be like what to do with all of your husband's or your wife's stuff. Okay. When do you get rid of it? How much to get rid of? How do you know when it's time? All that stuff that we may have questioned, because I know you've probably gone through those questions before. Before we get to the main topic, we'll do a little housekeeping and like do a little catch up because I haven't been on live for 2 weeks and it seems like forever. The first thing that I want to mention is that if you are not already a part of the Facebook group, and I've just put it there in the chat, it's www.facebook.com/groups/one happy widow. So if you are not already a part of the Facebook group, if you're here live, you're probably already there because that's probably how you know to be here today. If you're watching this on the recording, feel free to go in and apply to be a part of that group because I get a lot of my inspiration. I get a lot of motivation. I get a lot of support from the group. I also get a lot of my ideas from what we're going to talk about from week to week. If I'm kind of wondering what should I talk about on the live stream or what should I talk about on the next video, sometimes I feel like I've covered it all. And then sometimes a theme will come up on the group and it'll be like a topic that a lot of people respond to and a lot of people, give a lot of feedback for. And I'm thinking, okay, well, that's a good topic because a lot of people are asking questions. A lot of people are giving a lot of feedback for it. And so I get a lot of the ideas for the videos from whatever's, the topic at hand on the Facebook group. And so this week, one of the big topics was, moving forward and, how to deal with all the stuff. And so I was like, okay, that's a good topic to talk about. All right. Lee says hi from Tennessee. Alita says hi. Had to say this now. This chat is perfect timing. It's been on my mind. The stuff. I was not going to miss this like all the others. Lynette, one of my name sisters. That's my middle name is Lynette from Madison, Wisconsin. One-eyed dog from Long Beach, California, and I don't know if it's Aletta or Alita. I'm going to say Alita, but from New Hampshire. And then Beth is from Waterloo, Iowa. So we've got a handful of people already checking in today. And I know we'll probably get some more people coming in. With it being Sunday, it might not be as busy as Saturday. I don't know. I've never tried this day and time slot before, but we'll see. So that's the Facebook group. Go in there and join. Make sure you answer all the questions because if you skip any questions or you don't put any information in, it just gets declined and you have to apply again. I'm not trying to exclude people who really want to be part of the group. What I'm trying to do is exclude the creeps and the spam bots and the robots and all that kind of stuff. And so without answering all the questions, I really don't know. I can't really discern if you have good intentions or not. So I'm trying to protect everybody in the group. And so we kind of have a big filtering system on there. So next week, there will not be a live stream because there was a young man that's a member of our church and I didn't know him. And I don't know if he was still in high school or just graduated from high school, but he was a teenager. And he was driving in town and he pulled out in front of a garbage truck. And the garbage truck hit his car. And he was in the hospital for several days. And he was on life support. And he passed away on Thursday. And so our church is doing the funeral, and our choir has been invited to sing a few songs at the service on Saturday. So that's where I will be for most of the day on Saturday. And so we'll not have a live stream. But I think I already have the topic for next week. I'll just record the video. It'll probably be kind of short and I will just record it and upload it for Saturday unless a better topic comes along, and then I'll save that one and just do it later. Anyway, so that's just updates for next week. And then a couple of other updates. Remember I told you a few weeks ago that I was starting therapy. and I would update you when I let you know how it was going. So I had my first therapy session, and it's a new lady. I have not. We've been to this therapy place before. My kids go over there, and we've done the kid therapy. But this actual therapist that I've been assigned to is somebody I'd not met. And so she sits down. She's like, "Well, I've gone through your intake notes, and the things that you talked about, but just kind of tell me what kind of things you're struggling with that are bringing you here." And I was like, "Okay, well." La, 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 la. She's like, uh-huh, uh-huh, okay, okay. And she's flipping over and she's writing and she's writing and she's writing. And I'm like, oh, and this, and this, and this. And, I'm just laying it all out there. So, and basically, if you didn't see the video before about the reason why at this point, even 5 years out almost, that I've decided to go to therapy is not necessarily grief related directly. It's just that I think that, moms just have a busy life, and blending a family with stepchildren's and things like that, just, money, just things. It's already tough, but then, pile the grief on top of it and just kind of like add that to your pile of things, or you're juggling. I always say it's like juggling a bunch of balls in the air, that I just feel like it's just too much. Like I feel like I'm drowning and I can't really like get on top of everything. And so as a result, everything in my life is suffering. And so, and I feel like at any moment, like if I drop one ball, they're all just going to go, crashing to the ground, and it's causing a lot of anxiety. So she's like, "Oh," and she's writing everything down. She's like, "Okay, okay, okay." And she's like, "Whew, okay, that's a lot to take in." So, like, you can't memorize somebody's life history just when they're throwing it out there and talking a mile a minute, like I can do sometimes. And so she was like, "Yeah, it sounds like yeah, you're quite overwhelmed with some things. So we're gonna have to give you some coping skills, to figure out how to deal with all this stuff." I'm like, "Yeah." So she's like, "Okay, we're gonna come every 2 weeks." And she says, "Next time you come," she said, "we're gonna go back. We're just gonna cover like the history of you. And so we're gonna start with your earliest memory." Like of your life. And I'm gonna like some things that stood out over, different points in your life of, bad things and good things that you remember that are like big memories for you. And we're gonna get an idea of kind of how you were formed, like what formed your person and your personality and that thing, and how that all that stuff kind of led up to where you are today. So the history of me. And I was like, in an hour. And so she was like, "Well, we got to start somewhere." And so I was like, "Okay, well, get ready to write write a lot." So that should be fun. I don't know if we're just going to be walking, taking a walk down memory lane. I'm sure there's going to be some traumatic, events that are going to come up besides just the death of my husband, like previously to childhood trauma and things like that. So anyway, I just want to update you and let you know that that's where we are. And I started a new ADHD medicine. I told my doctor that the one I had was not really working for me. And so I take one in the day, and that's a stimulant, and it kind of like keeps me focused and keeps my mind clear. I take another different kind at night, that is supposed to counteract the blood pressure, so it kind of lowers my blood pressure. It also, one of the side effects is it helps you to sleep. It's not meant to help you sleep. It's not a sleeping pill, but that's just one of the things that comes along with it. And it's more of like a general thing that just hits you over time. And so that one helps me with my emotional regulation. So my emotions are not all over the place all the time, and me like flying off the handle and stupid stuff. And and it helps me with my rejection sensitivity. If you have ADHD or know anything about that, sometimes when somebody says, especially with my husband, he says one thing that I might take as negative, and I take it to heart, and I interpret that as him saying I'm the worst person ever, and I'm the worst wife and the worst mom, and I suck. And then I just kind of focus on that all day. So anyway, I ran out of that medicine, and I started a new stimulant medicine that's stronger and extended release. Um, and I guess they had to special order, the nighttime medicine, and it's still not in, and I ran out. So like the last 2 nights, I have just not been able to sleep. In addition to me taking the new stimulant medicine that's supposed to, the doctor's like, "Oh, it easily will last you 10 to 12 hours." Like I took it at like 9 o'clock in the morning, and it lasted more like 20 hours or something, like all night, all day, all night. And I'm sure I kind of have to get used to it being in my system too, but I don't even feel tired right now. And I didn't take the medicine this morning. But so for the last 2 nights, I have barely slept. So it's going to take me a little while to get used to this, all this new medicine. Oh, so I'm just hoping that it kind of levels me out soon. All right. Also, it's interesting. This kind of comes back up every once in a while, but like every few months or so, I'll get a couple comments that'll on some of my videos, and they'll be like, "Well, you are not really a widow because you're remarried." Like one person just made a comment and said, "But you're not a widow anymore because you're remarried." And then another person just asked, "But like, why do you call yourself a widow when you're remarried?" And you know what was funny is that she watched the video about the 12 things I learned when I became a widow. And she's like, I agree with everything you say in the video. Everything is just spot on. But why do you refer to yourself as a widow? And I'm thinking, okay, so if you agree with everything that I say, which means whatever I am sharing with you, you're like, okay, I resonate with that, I connect with that, or whatever. And then you're going to question why I consider myself a widow. Like, did my widowed experiences, did my widowed experience not just speak to you directly on all 12 points that you just said you agree with all of that stuff? But then you're going to question why I would consider myself to be a widow. Well, if I didn't call myself a widow, would you take my experiences as seriously? Would you give as much weight to my stories that I'm sharing with you if I was just a married person? So I don't know. I find it kind of weird because people seem to get offended that call myself a widow. First of all, what do you care? But second of all, um, I mean, I will give the explanation. This is my explanation about why I still consider myself to be a widow, because there are several um, pretty influential, I guess you could say, widowed influencers out there, like some of the big names, that you see over and over again. And I follow several of them. And I even have, talked directly with some and behind the scenes and done some interviews with some and things like that. And most of them are either remarried, about to get remarried, or are dating already. And so I'm like, so if when you are widowed, you remarry, do you have to step back and like remove yourself from the widowed community and say, well, I'm not a widow anymore, so I guess see ya, thanks, but I can't, I can't be here anymore? I don't think that's true. Like, it doesn't take away from the fact that I can still relate to all of the things, or a lot of the things, that are going on in the lives of the widows that are in our group. Number two, it doesn't take away my grief, my grieving process. Just because I remarried does not mean I stopped grieving the loss of my husband. Some things in my life are easier being remarried. Yes. If you watch the video about secondary losses that come along with being a widow, those are huge. Sometimes those are harder or longer lasting in your life than the primary, grieving loss of your spouse. So some of that secondary loss was alleviated when I got remarried. I will say that. But the primary loss is the same. The grief that I'm feeling, still there, did not change, and never will. My children, when I got married, my children's biological father did not rise from the grave. Okay, so their lives did not change one bit. As a matter of fact, they probably had even a few more issues on top of losing their dad. Now they've got this stepdad that they're having to like reconcile, the feelings of losing their dad versus this new guy coming into their lives and things like that. So that's actually complicated their lives a little bit and their grief. But they still don't have a dad. Just because I remarried did not fix that problem. And I still have to deal with their grief of losing their dad. So the grieving experience and the widowed experience, I am still a widowed person, a woman who lost her husband, period. And I always will be. And so, and I don't use the term so that I can use it to my advantage. I don't try to use that for, for clout or for, to push my agenda or whatever it is. It's not a marketing technique. My husband, he's widowed. He still considers himself a widower and always will. And several of the other widowed people out there who make YouTube videos and podcasts and blogs and things like that still consider themselves widows and are remarried. And so And it shouldn't really bother me, but the fact that that it bothers them, I don't get it. I don't understand it, but and on the flip side, sometimes I wonder. I see on Facebook groups, I see fresh widows sometimes, or maybe not so freshly widowed people sometimes that'll go up who are in the stuck in complicated grief, or they're in the anger stage of grief, who say, I don't like the word widow, and I am not a widow. I'm married to an angel in heaven. I'm married, or whatever. I'm still married to my husband, and I always will be married to my husband. And I'm not a widow, and I don't consider myself to be a widow. Okay, well that's on the other side, like that's still something, and it probably shouldn't bother me either, but it makes me it tells me something about where they are in their grief process. It tells me that they're still in denial. They're not to that acceptance stage yet. Because guess what? Your husband died, you are a widow. You might not want to be one. None of us want to be. You might not like to think of yourself as one, but you are. And so, but I'm not going to go up to them and say, well, you better get used to it because that's what you are. So you need to start calling yourself that. I would never approach a person who makes that statement, but I do interpret that statement to mean that person is in a stage of grief that hopefully they will not stay in, because to be able to fully heal and to be at that point where we get to the valley of grief is what I call it, right? You got fresh grief, then you go off the cliff, and then you're like down in the valley. This is where your low spot is, where you really start, like, the numbness is worn off, the realization they're never coming back and it's forever starts to come in, and like everything's crashing down. You're like, oh my gosh, reality really hits you. And sometimes it's like 6 to 12 months in before you get to that point. Then you start thinking, okay, at some point I have to start living again, right? I cannot just wallow in here where I am right now. I cannot be making myself a widow be like the central focal point of my life. I have to live. And so then you have to start crawling out of the bottom of that valley and crawl yourself out and get to that point where you're back to level ground again. And then you learn how to put one foot in front of the other and start living your life. Live your best life. And it's sad that you're living it without your husband or your wife. And I totally get it, because I'm there with you. But it's something that, it's a place that we need to be. And so the people who refuse to consider themselves widows, they're not going to get to that point until they do. So that it's, for them, that's a stage of they're not in acceptance yet. So it's okay to be there for a while. It's okay for you to say that, like, I refuse to think about it. I refuse to even believe it. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to say it. Okay, cool. We'll let you be there for a while, because we all have to go through that for a while. At some point, though, you've got to get past that if you really are going to heal. Okay, so that's my rant. That's my talking. Anyway, so now we're going to talk about the topic at hand, which is what to do with all their stuff. Okay, because we've had some topics about that this week in our group, and we've had some topics about it. It comes back and forth and hits us every once in a while and comes back. By the way, also, if you're when I'm on my ranting, when I'm talking, I can't really read the chat at the same time. So if you put stuff up and I miss your comment, and then we come back at the end and I start looking at comments, so you're welcome to save it till the end, or retype it, or chat with each other. That's fine. But I'm not ignoring you. I'm just trying to talk about the topic. And then at the end, I'll look at the comments, answer any questions that you might have. And then right before we wrap up. And so this topic is kind of a weird one, because it's one of those that is truly can really go either way. It is truly on this spectrum of normal grief. Like, most things are like, well, you can do this, but you really need to do that. There's most of the things that we do in our grief is like, you can do some things for a little while, but to be healthy grievers, we really need to be kind of in this area here. But getting rid of the stuff, from how I've experienced it, is really one that, like, if you're that person who has not gotten rid of anything and it's like over a year and you still haven't gotten to that point where you're ready, or if you're that person who like came home from the funeral and cleared the whole thing out and just got rid of it all, both of those things to me are totally normal, and neither one needs to be a concern, right? This is where, for the most part, grief is a human experience. And so we go through the process much the same way. I mean, there's always outliers, and we're all different. We all grieve differently on a different timeline, but it's still, I mean, if you group it together, there are still a lot of commonalities to the grief process, from start to not really finish, but, from start to like moving forward through our lives. But I have found that the getting rid of the stuff thing is all over the place. And one is not more or less healthy than the other. This is really where our differences shine in the way that we grieve in the grieving process. But a lot of us struggle with this because we're like, I don't know if I can. I don't know if I should get rid of their stuff. I don't know when is the best time. I feel like maybe I should, but I'm not ready yet. I tried to, and then I broke down and I couldn't handle it. So I had to stop. Like I mean, it is all over the place. So the main point of this whole talk that I'm going to tell you right off the bat is that on this topic, there truly isn't like a healthy way to do this process. It is one of those that really varies a lot in the way that we go, through it. I have heard of some people who have, they'll say things like, well, his boots were on the side of the bed from where he took them off right before he went to bed the last night before he died, and his clothes and his robe was over the chair, and his little things were set up, and his coffee cup was on the nightstand or whatever, and it's been 4 years and I have not even touched it. Like, it's exactly where it was. Okay, there are extremes, right? Like, after that long, you might want to maybe try to think about that you might be stuck somewhere. Like, you might want to think about, okay, it's probably time to start, you know, doing some things to put some things away. So that's an extreme case. Okay. And then there's on the other extreme is like, and I probably was on the other extreme. And I don't know that there's anything right or wrong about it, but you don't see it as often. But I came home after the funeral and not the same day, but like when I came home after the funeral, within that first week, I kept going into the closet to get dressed, and it was like my stuff was on this side and his stuff was on that side. And I would go into the closet to pick out my clothes, and I'd look over and I'd see, it was as if it was still there. And to me, it was bringing up this expectation. It was bringing up this. I looked over, and my mind was telling me, "Oh, he's going to come back. Like, he's about to come back. Like, I got to leave this here because when he comes back, his clothes will be ready. All this stuff will be here." And I felt like I was, fooling myself, and it was causing me like, my first thought was, "Oh, there's all his stuff. So when he gets stressed," and then my next thought would instantly go to, "Well, wait, he's never coming back in this closet again. He's never coming in here to get dressed again, ever." And so every time I looked at his stuff, that's the end thought that it came to me. It was like a reminder that he's never going to wear these clothes again. And it was tough. Like, I couldn't take it. I could not sit and look at that like one more minute, because it was just a reminder that all of his stuff was there and he would never touch it again. He would never read the books again. He would never wear the clothes again. He would never, you know, do his hobbies again or whatever. And so within that first week, I got into that closet and I got rid of, and I don't want to say everything, but like, I got rid of all the regular clothes that didn't really have any meaning, no emotional meaning. I kept his military uniforms because I figured at one point the kids might want to have those. He was a basketball referee, so he had some of those black and white striped shirts. I kept those. He had 3 or 4 of those. I kept those because that represents something that he did. And, that was part of who he was. And so I felt like, again, the kids might at one point want to take those and keep them. So I kept those. He had like a high school shirt that had all of the class of whatever when he graduated. It had like all the names of his graduating class on the back. I kept that. So, I mean, I kept a handful of like real meaningful pieces of clothing and his military boots, but the rest of it, went into a trash bag and and I thought about sending it to Goodwill, but then I was like, this is just weird. Like, and it probably doesn't even matter. Like, there's probably lots of clothes at Goodwill that are there because somebody died. But for me, it was just weird. And I was like, I don't want to give clothes of a dead person to to the Goodwill. So I just trashed them. I trashed them. I took his underwear and his socks, I put it all, and I got rid of it pretty quick. But that I think that was my way of processing through the fresh grief, and which is totally different from a lot of other people's way who was like, I can't touch anything, like I can't throw anything away. Um, and so just like before I even left hospice, before his body left the hospice room, I had already taken my wedding ring and put it on my right hand. And that was more of like, it wasn't like, okay, well, I'm a widow now, so let me go. It was more of a like, look at this. See this? Yep, my husband just died. It was like my I don't know, I can't explain it, but it was like my statement to the world to show everybody my pain and I'm in grief now or whatever. It was just my symbol of like, I'm suffering now. This represents my loss right here. To keep it right here was a lie, in my opinion. So, that's how I dealt with that in the beginning. But I don't think that's the norm. Probably not many people did that. And even like within that first week, his mom came back and she was like, yeah, just all his stuff, just pack up all his stuff, and just put it in a bag and just, I'll take it. I'll just take all his stuff, even his socks and his underwear and stuff. I'll take it. And I was like, why would you want to keep your son's socks and underwear? And by the way, I don't have it anymore. I got rid of it. And she was upset. She was like, I can't believe you did that. Sorry, I didn't know I needed to check with his mom before I did anything with his underwear. Anyway, so, but now we've got this discussion in our group, and there's a lot of people that I think they are unsure. Like I was sure I needed to get rid of that stuff. Like I couldn't get rid of it fast enough. Then there's other people that are they feel sure that they will never get rid of their spouse's things. They're like, this is how it's going to stay. They got their little shrine, they got their little stuff, like everything's going to be here and it's never going to be touched. That's probably not very healthy after a certain amount of time, you know, but most of the people fall into this other, middle ground where they're like, I know I'm going to have to, rearrange. Like, I know I'm going to have to get rid of some of their stuff at some point. Like, I can't keep everything. Um, like one of the discussions on the Facebook was somebody went out to the garage and they're like, my husband was a little bit of a hoarder, especially with tools. And so I'm out in the garage and I'm looking at a sea of tools, and most of the stuff, I don't even know what it is. You cannot have an emotional attachment to a bunch of tools that you don't even know what they are. You might have a couple of pieces, that you can attach a memory to, but for the most part, you cannot attach emotional attachment to every single item. And so she was trying to decide, number one, how do I get rid of all this stuff? Number two, how do I know what to keep and what to get rid of? And number three, like, how do I feel about this? Because when we first start thinking about, is it time to get rid of their stuff? And I think that a lot of the times the next thought that follows right behind that is some guilt. Because it's like you're throwing away things that represent him or her. And then in your mind, you're like, well, that's like another step of realizing or admitting or the reality that they're really gone and they're never coming back. It's like you're getting rid of them because that is a piece of them, that is parts of them, that is things that belong to them, and it kind of represents them in a way. And so by throwing those things away, it's almost like you're throwing away the memory of them, and then we feel guilty. So at some point we have to decide, why are we holding on to the things? Okay. That's the first thing that you have to decide, because in your mind, if there's a little voice that starts saying, it might be time, like it might be time to start thinking about getting rid of the stuff. If that little voice is starting to talk to you, you probably won't listen to it at first, but that little voice is going to get louder and louder and louder over time. And then you're going to struggle. You're going to say, I know I probably should because there's no reason to keep all this crap that I don't even know what it is, or I don't care about it, or I'm not going to use it, or it's taking up space, or it's, it's too much clutter. Or sometimes it's like sometimes it's triggering. To see the stuff over and over again is triggering, brings back memories that you are trying to move forward. Another person was talking about in response to that and saying, um, she was talking about selling her house, and she said, "I know it's not been a year," and they say, "Well, don't make any big decisions in the first year." I understand the logic. For a lot of people, that might be um, good advice, only if you're not able to make a really informed decision for yourself. If you're making the decision to change things just for the sake of changing and for the wrong reasons and things like that, no, you shouldn't make those big decisions. But if you can think clearly and it makes sense for you and it's going to help you and that kind of thing, then by all means, do what you need to do. So she was saying, "Well, I need to sell my house, and I know it hasn't been a year, but I have to get like all these memories surrounding me. I feel like I can't even move forward into a new life and make new memories because I'm surrounded by the old ones all the time." And she finally sold her house and she got out and got into a new environment. And she said, "I can't believe how much lighter I feel now. I really feel like I can move forward in my grieving process with a huge burden off of me." And for her, it was a good step. I mean, she didn't just get rid of something, she got rid of a whole house. That's a big step. And I did the same thing within that first year or so. Um, we were in a rental though, so it wasn't like I had a big emotional attachment to the house, but we were only there for a couple years, and in a good amount of that time, he was sick. And so most of the memories that I had attached to that house were memories of his terminal illness. And I didn't want to be reminded of that every time I looked around into the rooms, like that was where that's the first time that he had this episode. This is where they carried him from the hospital to the ambulance. This is where he laid when he found out the blah, blah. I mean, it's like all these memories were triggering me. I had to get out of there. And so, and then I had to go through, my husband was a hoarder too, and he had all these supplies of like he made paracord bracelets and all kinds of stuff out of paracord. He could make anything. He was like, how they say redneck boys, use duct tape to fix everything. Like duct tape can fix everything. Well, for him, paracord could fix everything. Like he had used paracord to like tie up one of the step sides of our car. He had used paracord to anchor the ceiling fan to keep it from wobbling on the ceiling. Like there was paracord shit everywhere. And so he was like, "Oh, you need blah blah. Let me get some paracord out." Okay, fixed. And so he had like rolls and rolls and rolls of paracord and all the stuff that goes with it, and the buckles and the charms, and he made the bracelets and I mean, it was everywhere. And he had fishing stuff, and he had tools, and he had military stuff, and the garage was just packed. And I brought one of those big dumpsters into the driveway, and I filled it up like on the first day, and I had it for 7 days. And I called him. I was like, "Well, it's full. Come and get it. And while you're at it, bring another empty one." I ended up filling up 3 of those dumpster things with all of his stuff. And I probably could have went through it in a shorter amount of time and like sold some stuff and maybe made some money off of these things or whatever. But I just needed it. Like, I can't let things, drag out like that. I needed that next step to happen as quickly as possible. And so and it was funny because as I was picking up the stuff, I'd pick up a bag of his things and I'd be like, "Sorry, Daddy." I called him Daddy, just like the kids called him Daddy. I called him Daddy, but I was talking to him like, "Sorry, Daddy. I'm sorry, I'm getting rid of all your stuff." But the other side of my brain was like, "Well, he doesn't need this stuff anymore. He's not going to use it." And I wasn't going to use it. And so for me, it helped me to move forward in the grieving process. And it does come along with some guilt. It does. That's, I mean, our spouses are gone. So there's some pain that's going to be attached to all the steps to moving forward. Even finding happiness again, you feel a little guilty because you're like, "Wow, my husband died and I'm laughing at this joke." Like, so every time that you take a step forward in grief towards health, better health and growing as a person, there is a little piece of you that's going to feel guilty for leaving him behind. But that's just part of the process that we can't stop that from happening. Aside from bringing them back, which we know we can't help. I mean, that we know that that can't happen. Like that's unfortunately that's part of the painful. It's like, when you rip the Band-Aid off, there's some pain that's going to be, affiliated. You can either feel the pain little hair at a time and pull it off real slow, or you can just rip it off and just feel all the pain at once and then just get it over with. Either way, you're going to feel that pain. So it just depends on how do you want to feel it. And so, so the answer, if you have the question of when, is that there isn't. But I will say this, if you start hearing that little voice that says, I think it might be time, and then your other voice is like, nope, 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 not time. It's not time. Okay. I can't. That's heartless. What would people think? That's terrible. I'm throwing away all this stuff. Like you start, arguing with yourself. That's the first thing that will probably happen. And then as that voice gets louder and louder, you have to start reasoning with yourself and thinking, when is that good time? But I will tell you this, most of the time in the stories that I've heard from people who've talked about it, most of the time, you get to a point where you kind of like click. Something clicks. And this happened to me too on a few things, because I didn't get rid of everything. I held on to some things. And then over time, I'd be like, you know what? It's really time to get rid of like his stuff in the bathroom. I left his stuff in the bathroom because we had 2 sinks and he had all his stuff next to his sink and all my stuff next to my sink. And you would think that would have been another trigger for me to remind, like as a reminder that he's never going to brush his teeth again. But for some reason, that didn't trigger me the same way that his clothes did. And so for me, I had a harder time with that, with his toiletries. And so I didn't get rid of those for a long time. And so then it was kind of like, I did question myself. I'm like, when do I get rid of his toothbrush? When do I get rid of his brush? When do I get rid of his razor stuff, and his shaver? I, and I went through that little tug of war that I talked about a few minutes ago. And this happened to me like one day, it just kind of clicked. It was like, okay, it's time. It's time. Like this has got to go. And it's almost like at that point, I couldn't get rid of it fast enough. And so you might not have that instant click to where it's like so, blatantly obvious. But a lot of the times, if you're wondering, is it time? Is it time? Is it time? I think a lot of the times you will just kind of get to that point where you're like, yep, I think I'm there. Like your brain just gets to a new level. Your heart gets to a new place. I can't really explain it, but it's almost like you feel that guilt so long, you finally are like, okay, I'm done feeling guilty about throwing away his toothbrush because I really know his toothbrush is not him. Whether I keep it or throw it away, it's not going to change the fact that he's gone and not coming back. So, like, what am I going to do with this toothbrush? It's not useful. I have an emotional attachment to this because it was in his mouth. It's got his DNA on it. Like, this is a personal item, right? So I have attached an emotional, I have emotional attachment to a toothbrush. It's not really doing anything for me. And I finally realized that throwing the toothbrush away wasn't going to make me feel any different about my grief, about him being gone. It's not going to make me feel better. It's not going to make me feel worse. It's a toothbrush. It's just an inanimate object that I have placed some emotional value on that doesn't really belong there. So once my mind kind of clicked to that, the more logical side of it, then I was like, okay, I'm ready. And so and this might happen to you in stages. Like I said, with me, at first it was the closet, like had to go, but then it took me a while. It took me like over a year before I finally got rid of all the toiletries. And then, so you might be getting rid of their stuff in stages. So you might look at, his side of the bed where his boots were sitting and his robe was sitting and his, his coffee cup or whatever. That might be the first thing that you kind of like battle with. And you're like, well, when do I put that away? When do I throw it away or put it away or get rid of it or put, whatever, or what do I do with it? So you might deal with that little area. And when you do, that's a win because you've made a step forward. And so you've made a decision and you've decided to move forward in your life and to take that little step. And so you take that and you take that win and then you deal with another part of it on another day. You don't have to deal with all their stuff on the same day. You don't have to decide on all of their stuff at one time. You can get rid of a few things today and hold on to some other things, because some things you might be okay with, letting go of. And then some other things you're like, nope, I'm not ready yet. His jewelry, I'm not ready yet. And honestly, you will never get to the point where you get rid of all their stuff. You're not trying to erase their existence on this earth. You don't want like everything that ever meant anything you're not trying to like erase their existence. Okay. There's going to be some things that you never get rid of, and that's totally okay. And you should hold on to some things that would be handed down. Like I said, military uniform, his referee shirt, his wedding ring, his driver's license, his wallet, like it's not a whole lot of stuff, but there, and obviously pictures of everything or whatever. So there are some things that you're going to want to hold on to, a select few things that obviously you will never want to let go of, that you either want your children to have or that you just always want to have, that meant so much, that are like things that will not make you cry every time you look at them, things that will make you smile, make you appreciate the fact that you had the time with them that you did. And that's totally fine. And you should do that. But what you want to do is discern the difference between what are those things that do need to be kept forever, that you never need to decide to get rid of them because you need to keep them. Like I said, like their wedding rings or some things that are really, represent like who they were. You need to discern what those few things, the really important things are. And it's probably not a whole lot. Then you got to decide when all the other stuff is going to go. And there's no right answer. I can't tell you when. I can't say, well, 6 months or whatever. Number one, you cannot listen to what other people say, because the first thing's going to happen is people are going to say, I can't believe you still like the house looks exactly the same 2 years later as it did the day he died, and you haven't moved a single thing. People are going to judge you. Like, well, we did a video about that. No matter what you do, people are going to judge you. And then when you get rid of your stuff, people are going to be like, oh my God, you got rid of that stuff already? Like you threw it all away? So people are going to, and so if you are worried about what other people are going to say about it or what other people are going to think about it, then that should have no bearing on whether you get rid of the stuff or when you get rid of the stuff. But a lot of times that's the biggest deciding factor, because people are like, well, they said I should. They said that it's time that I should. So I guess I should, but I really don't think I can because I think it's going to cause me to have a mental breakdown. Well, then don't. I mean, how much do you care about those people who are telling you, judging you about your life? They're doing their own thing. So the biggest factor is about you. When are you ready? When are you comfortable? When are you like, okay, it's time? And then some people are like, I got to get out of this house because every place I look has a memory attached and it's triggering me. That was me. Then you have these other people that are like, well, I've lived in this house for 48 years with my husband, and every single thing has a memory that helps comfort me. I feel safety here because this is where my life was with my husband or my wife. And I don't want to leave this place because I might not have my husband here still, but this is the home that we created together and the life that we had all within these walls. And this is where I want to stay. And that brings them comfort. And that is totally fine. I can't relate to that, but I've never had a home that I lived in for more than a couple of years because I was a military kid. We were not, we didn't have a lot growing up. And so we moved a lot to rental, an apartment, and another rental, an apartment. So I don't have that, that sense of permanency to a residence that I can relate to that feeling. So that's why I don't feel that way. But I can respect how someone else says, I lived there from it's the only home I ever shared with my spouse for the whole time that we were married. And it has all these memories and these traditions, and my kids come over and we do these things. And like, this is my home, and I don't know, I would feel like a fish out of water if I try to move somewhere else. That's totally cool. But at some point, it's time to still make that home yours. And, make it the home of a person who lives there just by themselves, right? Like if you keep it like a museum, like exactly like it was when he was there and it's been 5 years, go in and rearrange. paint some walls, buy some new furniture, like give it an update so that you can mentally trigger yourself to tell your heart that this is your new chapter. This is your chapter 2. Like chapter 2 doesn't have to be a new love. Chapter 2 is just your life after your spouse, and it's how you make it. And so I hate to use that term new normal. I hated that when I first heard it, new normal, but that's what it is. As much as I hate the term, that is what it is. It's your new normal. You don't want it to be, but it is, or it does become that. And so you have to make that for yourself. So bottom line is, to wrap everything up, is that it's about you. You don't have to get rid of everything at the same time. There's no specific time, but when you think you might be ready, pick one little area, one room, one part of a room or whatever, and then kind of work on it in your brain. Like, well, what needs to happen for me to feel like I'm okay with getting rid of this? Or can I pick 10 things to get rid of? And can I pick 2 things to hold on to and get rid of the rest? Make deals with yourself and say, well, this is like a no brainer. Like, I'm keeping this for sure. This I'm not quite so sure about, but I'm okay with the underwear and the socks, so start just separating things into like super, super important, never get rid of. I'm not sure about, so I'll decide later. And I'm okay with this going because this is just, I'll probably forgot about it anyway. So it's kind of like put that into 3 categories, and then start working through it that way. And I think a lot of the times that once you start thinking about it like that, your brain will eventually go to that place where it's like, okay, yep, I'm ready for that. I'm ready to let it go. If you've ever watched that hoarder show, people have a really hard time getting rid of all their stuff because they have an emotional attachment to every single piece of garbage and every piece of whatever is in their house. They have an emotional attachment. When you try to take it away from them before they're ready, they get really upset and mad. So you don't want to do that to yourself. So what you need to do is try to work on removing the emotional attachment from every single thing that had anything to do with them, and only focus that emotional attachment to a few significant items. And then the rest of it, work on a little bit at a time, figuring out, when you need to get rid of that stuff. And so that's my advice, not professional advice. That's just what I've, heard from other people, how I've dealt with it myself, and kind of gaining stuff from the conversations that I've seen on our Facebook page. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to look at some of the chats and see if there's any questions. If you have a question now, this would be a good time to post it. But you are, and you've been through this before. What a blessing you are to others. I think she was talking about what my widowed experience and my talking about being a widow. So yes, I know I'm remarried. I got that. But the widowed experience, I'm still living it. And so, and I still feel like I can help people. And if I take the widow distinction away, then I'm just another person. And I don't want widowed advice from a non-widowed person, because you have no idea what you're talking about because you ain't been through it. You know what I mean? I saved things I knew were important to him, but also sentimental to me. So that's a good idea. If they were important to him and sentimental to you, then pick out those things, and then they be the things you save. Then you got to deal with all the rest of the stuff. What save, what get rid of, that kind of thing. Marty says, I'm only 6 weeks in. Marty, if you haven't gotten rid of a single thing and you're only 6 weeks in, totally cool. That's totally normal. Like you probably maybe haven't even processed your initial fresh grief yet. So, these are things that will come up on a recurring basis through your grieving process, as you kind of go through. My wife loved vintage clothing and always dressed nice when she went out, even when going to the chemotherapy. Going through her clothes brings tears and memories. I can't get rid of them. So, and that was one-eyed dog, but that's fine. If you cannot get rid of them yet, and if it brings you more pain to get rid of the stuff, then put it to the side for today and then try again some other time. And if all her clothes were what represents that about her, and you want to end up keeping those vintage items, then that's okay too. I mean, there's really nothing wrong if you keep every single piece of clothing. But like I said, at some point you have to draw a line and say, there are some things that I'm going to have to get rid of, and then some things I'm going to save. So, okay. So if you decided that you want to keep every single piece of clothing in the closet or in a spare closet, then that's the thing you say, because that's what gives you good memories of her, and that's okay. So pick some other stuff to get rid of, right? So just focus on something else. Like I said, if it hurts you more to get rid of it, we're not trying to do that. We're trying to lift that, lighten that burden. And so, even though you think that it's going to hurt, it might hurt a little at first, but is it going to cause you to be able to move forward a little bit? Is the end result going to be that you move forward and you progress? Then we need to think about, is that the next step for you? My wife, oh, I already read that. After 9 months, I had to. So Jay basically was like, okay, yeah, I did it. And like got to that point, was like, okay, I'm ready. And that happens to a lot of people. Says, Marty, you will gain lots of knowledge and skills from your new life from one heavy widow. She is right on. Sorry for your recent loss. So yeah, and I just share the experiences that I have, that I see a lot of other people also are like, oh yeah, I went through that. Oh yeah, I went through that. Oh yeah, I went through that. Then I'm like, okay, that's a topic that seems to be common. So that's what I want to talk about. And I don't really give a lot of advice, because I try, because there's really not a right way to grieve. I just share my experiences and what I think about stuff. And then you can agree or not agree. But most of the time, people just want to be validated. They just want to know that they're not the only person that feels that way, that they're not weird. They're not grieving the wrong way, because there's no wrong way. Like a lot of times they just feel better to know, okay, well, so at least I'm not the only one to do whatever it is or feel however you feel. Yes, and it is triggering. Bev is here from South Africa. Awesome, awesome. Marianne says, I got rid of his clothing very shortly after he passed. I cried every time I went to get dressed, seeing his clothes hanging there. I kept a few things that meant something to me. So Marianne, that was basically my story. Exactly. I felt exactly the way you feel. So, we all kind of fit into these different categories, but that was me. Let's see. Sheila says hello from North Carolina. Would love to have someone give me an estimated time, Marty. So, God, that's really, like I said, with the stuff, that really varies. And so, I would say sometime in the first year. That's so vague and broad, but like, in that first year, once you've got done with the probate stuff and the legal stuff and the paperwork stuff, and you're back to work, and like you're trying to start living a day-to-day life again, then you start trying to think of, okay, now what do I do with the stuff? You don't deal with the stuff right away, because you're dealing with like, getting up every day. You're dealing with probating the estate. You're dealing with wills and, who gets what, and burial issues. And, you're dealing with all this other stuff that's way more important than their stuff. And so that gets put to the side. But once all the initial like chaos of every day, it's nothing but dealing with grief stuff. Then it's like, okay, the dust is kind of settled, and you're like, when you look around and you're surrounded by all their stuff, and you're like, now what do I do? That's when you try to start dealing with it. You might not be ready to get rid of it, but you mentally start dealing with, what do I get rid of? When do I start getting rid of it? And start processing in your brain and make a timeline for yourself. All right. Marianne says, I still have a ton of his tools in the garage. So yeah, that's where, like you might use some tools. So if you think you're going to use them, pick out the ones you're going to use, and then take the rest, and then either give them away, try to sell them, try to go through and have somebody come in and just pick them up. Give them to people who might use them. You can't keep, if it's a tool that you're really not going to use, then, what's the use of keeping it? It's taking up space. So, take out a few important ones, the ones that have emotional attachment or that you will actually use, and then see about the other ones. If you don't even know what it is, for me, I don't know what most tools are. And so, if I'm picking something up, I'm like, I don't even know what this is or what it goes to. Okay, well, that's going to be in the giveaway sale pile or whatever. Most people are too busy trying to find someone else to worry about anything else. I know people who are into the next person in 60 days. Well, I don't know about most people. That's, people are all over the place with moving forward on that too. Some people are like, I never want to find another person. And then some people get really lonely and they start looking, and sometimes it depends on if you've had anticipatory grief before their death, or if it was a sudden. So it's hard to make a blanket statement and say most people do this, because that's not really true in the grieving world. Um, when you put specifics on it, you know what I mean? So it's really tough to like group everybody into this. Most people do this and most people do that. It's probably more accurate to say some people do this, some people do that, and some people even do this. And any of these things is okay as long as you're not hurting yourself, hurting others, or not getting out of bed or whatever. So that's kind of how we like to look at it. Is everybody's grief process, or journey is different, and it's all okay. As long as you're not moving backwards, and as long as you're not thinking of hurting yourself, and as long as you're not thinking of hurting others, it's whatever you need to do that makes you feel better. So, got to get through it somehow, right? All right. First for me was his clothes. It made me sick to my stomach seeing them in the closet. Yeah, see, that's a lot of people are like, I can't touch them, and then other people are like, I can't look at them. I can't, like, I got to get rid of them. So it's kind of like pretty polarizing one way or the other with the clothes. Ladies, we will always need his tools. Better to have and not need than need and not have. I mean, that's true with some common tools, but just depends. Like some men were like crazy with their tools and had the toolboxes and like hundreds of little pieces of things or whatever. And if you are as much into tools as he was, awesome. If you think you will use them, keep them. But it really just depends. But like if you got a whole garage full of tools and you are not tool inclined like me, I keep a hammer, flathead screwdriver, Phillips head screwdriver, maybe a wrench or some sockets. I don't really even know the difference. But like aside from that, the rest I could not tell you what it's for, and we'll probably never use it. And so for me, we'd be getting rid of that. And you might have a trusted male friend or a brother or cousin or a church member or something, that can go through and be like, can you pick out some really important basic tools that I might be able to use and keep that would be most important to keep, and just let me know, like what is good to keep, and then help me with getting rid of the rest of it. You might be able to find somebody that can help you with that. I have a big box that I put unthrowables in and other things I slowly decide whether to throw, donate, gift. Lots of train books have given me so much pleasure to a young neighbor, makes me happy. What a great idea. So you have different bins and you're like, okay, keep, then for sure keep, maybe not really sure right now to think about it, and then for sure get rid of. Give it away. Let it bring happiness to somebody else. So what a great idea. Like put bins out if you even if you have to, and then like separate, keep, not sure yet, decide later. And then, and so maybe as you go through every room, you kind of separate, and then maybe some things will go from the maybe, they will either end up going back to the keep, or they will end up going back to the, okay, I'm ready to get rid of that now. So what a great idea. I don't think about that logical stuff sometimes. I never listen. Marianne says, I never listen to anyone else's opinion of what I should be doing. Amen, sister. Like you do you and whatever's best for you, as long as it's not moving you backwards or hurting people. Jack Blitz, I wear some flannel shirts, those I'm keeping. Wear the robe with a smile. There you go. So keep those few little things that if it puts a smile on your face, keep it. If it causes you pain or means not really anything, then, think about how to get rid of it. Oh my goodness, I'm working on this today. A Life Blessed says, I just sat down and looked at my phone and saw this video. My husband died on May 20th. So, that is some fresh grief. That's one of my daughter's birthdays is May 20th. And so I know that just was around the corner. And it's not something, like I said, that you have to decide everything all at one time. Go through. It's going to be a phase. It's going to be a process. You might be able to get rid of some things easily in the beginning. And then some things are like, oh, I'm just not ready yet. I'm not ready yet. And just because you're not ready today doesn't mean you're not going to be ready a month from now or 6 months from now or next year. Because we do change. Our feelings do change. And, we do process through this grief. And it will get different, and it will get better if we're moving one foot in front of the other like we're supposed to. Alita, I kept his flannel PJs. Yes, A Life Blessed, my condolences to you. So definitely flannel PJs. You could probably wear those things. And that if that brings you joy and puts a smile on your face, and by all means, keep that. Thank you, Jay Blizz. This is a place to find answers and ask questions. Yes. How do you find someone to help you get rid of more valuable tools, mechanics tools, machinist tools? Yeah. And I think I kind of talked about that a minute ago. Just kind of, if like a trusted male a grown son or a brother or a cousin or a friend of your husband's, or something. I mean, everybody's kind of different, but or a church member or a neighbor, a coworker, something like that. Maybe you can have somebody, whatever. Can you add closed captioning to your videos? Oh, good question. I'm sure there is a way. So let me work on that and I will get back to you. I'm sure there is a way. It's just a matter of me taking the time to figure it out. So I will put that on my list and figure out how to do that. Thank you for that suggestion. When do you take off your wedding band? Oh, and that's like a whole nother video, man. That is like a whole nother video in itself. And there are so many different schools of thought on that. But like I said, as for me, I took it off right away. I put it on my right hand. Then a few weeks later, I was like, God, my hand felt so naked without it. I ended up getting something called a widow's band or widow's ring. It was costume jewelry. It was like $60 or whatever. And I put it on. It was black and it had like a fake diamond in the middle. And I tell you, I got so many compliments. People were like, "Oh, that is such a cool ring. Oh, that is so cool. That's so pretty." And I was like, "Oh, thanks. It's a widow's ring." And they're like, "Oh, sorry." They were so embarrassed, but it made me feel better because it was something there that I'd had on my hand for 17 years and it felt so weird to be naked. So I had my wedding ring on my right hand, my widow's ring on my left hand. That's how I dealt with that. So yeah, when I started dating, I kind of widow's ring was like off and on, just depending on the day, whenever I felt like it. When I started dating JP, took the widow's ring completely off. And then as we were dating and getting a little more serious, I even took my wedding ring off and then stored it. So, let's see. I made my dear husband's dressing gowns into 8 memory bears for his daughter, granddaughter, sister, and dear friends who loved him. Awesome idea. And I didn't think about that, but that's a great idea. A lot of people will do that too. They will make like memory quilts with their shirts, or they'll make memory teddy bears, or sew together some items. So if you have some clothing items that you're not really sure they have sentimental value, but you don't want to just hang them up in the closet, you can find somebody who commission somebody who can cut the little important pieces off of them and make quilts, pillowcases, pillows, bears, teddy bears, things like that out of those pieces of clothing. A great way to hold on to that memory and give you a smile, but not just have stuff hanging in the closet, just to have it hanging in the closet. So that's a great idea too. Let's see. Except expired meds and rusted stuff and vital meds, which I'm grateful to have donated, it's all the same around. I have repainted the home. Like you said, things as they are make me feel at home. Okay. Yeah. So, and that was another thing I forgot to talk about, but for some reason I had a really hard time getting rid of his medicine. And I mean, I didn't need it to take it. He had a lot of pain medicine and I was like, ugh. Like it just felt weird getting rid of his medicine and I don't know why. And so it took me a long time to get rid of his medicine and it was way expired and like obviously not being used because it was prescription medication for his illness and stuff. And like it was just sitting under the cabinet. And I don't know why I feel like that should have been the first thing to go, but it took a long time for me to get rid of that. And I can't explain why. I don't know, but that was one of the last things I got rid of. DNH, that's a great idea. Yeah, about the memory bears and stuff. While I have thought of leaving the city, it's nearly 2 years now, I can't, as the home is mine and there's a lot of emotions around everything as my parents gifted me the home. So yeah, if it makes you feel worse to move out, then don't move out. If it's going to cause you more pain and grief to leave, then don't leave. But for some people, it causes more pain to stay. So that's just a personal preference. I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. Marty, I totally feel you. I would not either. It's a tough thing to have to deal with for sure. How long did it take to probate the will? That one, my husband did not have a will. And so we probated nothing. He had no estate. And so, because in his mind, he was like, oh, she's my wife and we have children together. And so she'll just get everything. Well, yeah, I did. But that's a story for another day too. It's a lot harder when you don't have a will. And so I really don't know how long it takes. I don't think it takes too terribly long, but that would be a question maybe for somebody else who actually went through it because I didn't do that. I had a life insurance policy that I was the beneficiary of, and even that one was contested. And that took a long time. We went through the court process for all that. It was scary. It was messy. um, Hello, I am not a widow, but I really love your channel as I think you are helping so many different types of grief, as well as the grief and heartache of being a widow or widower. Thank you so much. And yeah, I haven't talked about that in a while, but I do feel like, we need to remove that stigma of not being able to talk about grief except for with each other. We can talk about our spouses dying all day long with somebody else, because we have that in common. It's hard to talk about it with somebody who hasn't lost them because they feel weird and they don't really want to sit and talk about it because they feel strange, and then they want to leave. They want to, like, okay, well, so I'm gonna go now. Okay, so I'm gonna go pick up the kids. Okay, well, you have them. Okay, all right, praying for you. Okay, bye. So they don't know how to. So yeah, we need to, like, get that elephant out of the room. We need to normalize talking about grief so that we can openly grieve in public, without feeling like we have to go hide to go shed some tears and things like that. So I think a lot of people who are not even widowed, who know widowed people, if you're related to one, and you want to know, or you have a friend or coworker and you really want to know how to help them, I think they could get a lot out of the videos here. So um, let me see. It's on my end. Video is back. Oh, there must have been some issues with I did see a little bit glitchy, but hopefully it's not too bad today. Marty Johnson, I truly am sorry for your recent loss. Please continue here. You will be understood no matter your questions and feelings. Yeah. So if you, like I said, if you're not already a member of the Facebook group, do it. Because, I can talk about things real quick in these videos, but when you're having a tough time, and you're like, you just need to, like, vent, like, man, let me just tell you what happened today. I'm just really I'm struggling today because this is what happened. Go on the group and you talk about it, and you will just be surrounded. And I can't even get to all of the comments. Like, a lot of times I'm not able to read everything that everybody says because I can't follow it enough. And so I'll pop in and I'll see somebody posted something like 2 days ago, and then I'll see like 38 comments below by other members. They just surround that person with their virtual arms. And first of all, they give them love and support. And they say, hey, that's really tough. I'm sorry that you're going through that. And then the second thing they do is say, here's what happened. Here's what helped me when I went through something similar. And hey, it's going to get better, I promise. And, you're in a safe place and we care about you. And that has been like the main, way that our members have shown support for each other, is that, nothing, nobody's guilted for feeling a certain way. Nobody's like, woe is me, and I am so sad. And everybody's like, me too. Let's be sad together. Like, it's not, a lot of groups are like that. It's like misery loves company. Our group is just not that way. We have this special way of, like, just loving on each other and giving, validating the feeling and saying, yes, I get it. Like, that really sucks. And I'm so sorry. But then turning it around and saying, here are some things that might help. And we're here for you to support you. We care about you and it's going to get better. And we're all healing together. We're all on the same team. We're all in the same widowed boat. And we're all just trying to, get to the next day and get better. And so it's just awesome. It's just an awesome atmosphere there on the group. I love it. Let's see. A meet and greet would be fun for all who could make it. That would be. That's been something that's crossed my mind. If I can ever quit my job, those are like the bigger projects that I would really like to do. I would like to have like a widowed cruise. And like book some for all of us and like go on a cruise. I really want to do that. I mean, for me, but yeah, for everybody else too. And like have guest speakers and like eat some good food, and like I really want to do that. So maybe one day. Let's see. Met a lady at the grocery store, lost her husband a year ago. I'm at 17 months. We were both talking about what we do or don't do. Made me feel like we were living in each other. Yeah. So you could relate to that person because, first of all, it's not weird because you're both sharing that same grief, and then you can relate to each other. And so it is kind of nice when you find somebody who can relate to your grief, and then you can share with each other. That's why grief share is really cool because even though it is faith-based, it's, you're together with people who have lost someone to death. And so you don't feel so strange about sharing that, because sometimes I feel like if I share this with people, like in a public setting or in a group job setting or something like that, that people think I'm trying to use the widow card, like as a sympathy, like, well, I'm a widow, my husband died. And they're like, oh, I'm so sorry. And in their mind, they're like, dang, well, she just trumped all of our problems. And so now what do we do? So it's not like that with grief share because everybody's at that, at that level. And so Jay says it's the best group ever. That's how I get by the group. So yes, I agree. So go join. If you're not already there, go join. If you need me to put the link down again to remind you, I can do that too. Lynette says, Leo, thank you so much for some very practical skills to get through this difficult process. I felt so much freer to start working through this part of widowhood. Yeah, I think it's a big one. It's just not something that happens right away. So I thank all of you for being here. I appreciate all of you. I hope many of you I do recognize from the group. I mean, there's some people that I see almost every time we have a live stream, and then I see people who post a lot on the group. And so, I do recognize those names. And then every time we have a live stream, I just see some newbies, and I don't know if they're in the group or not, because I can't remember if I've seen them post or not. So, but I would encourage you to go there because it's free. And, it's just like a big group of people who we're all going through this together and we're helping each other. And so, all right. So that's going to wrap it up for today. Please add the link. Okay. I'm going to add it right now. www. I can't talk and type at the same time. Okay. Let's see if I spelled it all right. Yep. Okay. Jonice from France. Yeah. Jonice is, I feel like Jonice, did you just join like in the last few months, I think? Because I know you're real active on the group, but I don't remember it. I feel like it's just been kind of like a little bit more recently. Anyway, so I appreciate all of you. I care about all of you. And I want the reason why I do this, the reason why I share these things is it helps me too, because I feel like, okay, cool. I'm not the only person. I hear people like, yeah, me too, me too. So it makes me feel better. But mostly I want people to say, thank you so much. That helped me. Like my purpose is to help people get through this grieving process, not to lecture you, not to tell you what you're supposed to do and what you're not supposed to do, all that kind of stuff. I hate to see when people are stuck in grief. We got to get through it, right? You can't get around it. You can't get over it. You can't get by. You cannot circumvent. There's no shortcuts. We all have to get through it. And it's really tough. It sucks. But when people are halfway through it and then they get stuck and they just are like, well, I'm just never going to be happy again. I'm never going to, like they're real angry all the time. And it's like, well, and you can tell it's been like a couple of years and that they're stuck. They're stuck. Like, I don't want anybody to get stuck in grief. I know it's not easy. Life's not supposed to be easy, but it sure as hell is not supposed to be this hard. Right. And I know it's hard for a while, but it's not supposed to be that hard for the rest of your life. Okay. There's still happiness to be found. There's still joy to be found. There's still purpose to be found and reasons for you to be alive. There's still reasons for you to get up, and people need you. Somebody out there needs you. Okay. An animal, a person, your services, there's a reason why you're here. You just have to figure out what that is and then go out and use whatever talents and gifts that God gave you and go out and put them to use. Don't keep them to yourself and lay in the bed and, not help anybody. And if you can't help yourself, go help somebody else. Sometimes it's easier to help somebody else than it is to help ourselves because we're wallowing in self-pity. And so if you get up, you go help somebody else, then you won't feel so guilty. Some people feel guilty for trying to help themselves and feel happy. So if you can't feel happy, go help somebody else feel happy. And then you will feel happy in a roundabout way. So that's another way of looking at it. All right. I wear his wedding band on my left finger and my band on the left ring finger. Everyone says, looks nice like that. Okay. So see, the wedding ring thing used to be like, oh, this is what you're supposed to do. And then this is had the time period or whatever. There's no rules anymore on that. It's whatever feels best for you is what you do. And so, and I've learned that the hard way. All right. Saw says, hey, everyone, I'm new here. To Lynette, I'm 24 months, but I'm going to get in the process now. Okay. All right. So we'll see you in the group. If you're not already there, then you get there, and then I will put all the approval process. Sometimes it takes me a couple days to get. I do them in batches, so I'll get 3 or 4 days will go by, and I'll do like 10 people at a time. So don't panic if it takes a couple days for me to get to you. All righty, and then I got some other stuff that's in the works, in the process, some goodies, and I'm working on it. I don't want to talk about it anymore though, it's because I'm afraid if I say it and then I don't do it and let people down. So I'm working on some stuff. All right. Okay. So we'll see you in the group, working on my website. And so as soon as that gets fully loaded up, I'll let you know too. And until then, remember, next week, no live stream, but I will put a video in. And then the week after that. So in 2 weeks, I'll see you again. And we'll have a new topic. If you have topic ideas, let me know, because sometimes I think I'm running out of ideas to talk about. So it helps me when you say, hey, can you talk about this? And then I go and research and find out whatever and bring it to the table. All right. And so, okay. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for coming. And I'm going to wrap it up. Going to go eat me some late lunch. And I'm going to work on this basement that I'm pick up that bra and maybe do some laundry. Okay. All right. Bye, guys. We'll see you next time. If I can find the button to turn it off. Okay. Bye.